chair now recognizes the vice chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Peters, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we've already heard from the witnesses, the Dobbs decision has far-reaching impacts. Just yesterday, we heard in the news about a Texas woman's experience of being refused care in the first trimester due to that state's extreme anti-abortion laws because the providers feared they would be sued under state law if they intervened. So what happened after extreme pain and bleeding, instead of receiving a safe surgical procedure to treat the miscarriage as she had in the past, her hospital sent her home to self-monitor her condition as she bled in her bathtub for 48 hours straight. I am deeply concerned that people in these situations could die trying to access basic life-saving care because of Dobbs. And every pregnancy is different, and that's why these decisions should be made by the patient and her doctor, not by politicians. The Dobbs decision has caused chaos nationally. Patients are being forced to travel across state lines to get care, and some Republicans are already calling for a national abortion ban, so that means it's not a state-specific issue, it's a national crisis. Dr. Guerrero, you mentioned in your testimony that with Indiana's special legislative session slated to begin next week, special legislative healthcare providers in Illinois may need to prepare to take an influx of patients from Indiana, in addition to Kentucky and Missouri, if or when their own state abortion ban's legal block is lifted. And you said that this has created the conditions, quote, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Dr. Guerrero, abortion clinics in states where abortion is legal prepared to absorb the health care needs of women who will be traveling across state lines to receive care? And what do these conditions mean for women whose only options to get an abortion are to travel out of state?
Well, first of all, even before the Dobbs decision, we needed to refer about 35% of our patients outside of state to access care because of the existing restrictions in Indiana. And that in and of itself is already a huge barrier. There's this sort of idea that, well, you just have to travel out of state, it's no big deal. And that's clearly said out of a misunderstanding of what it means to be low income in rural areas from different marginalized communities where traveling to a place like Chicago from many parts of Indiana is a huge financial burden because of the cost of just tolls, gas now, and staying there.
How about the facilities, though?
The facilities are, they've been preparing to know that they will have to have an influx of patients coming in, but it's not something that they were necessarily prepared to do.
You know, Republicans have talked about pushing a national abortion ban, so I take to heart the comments of my colleague, Dr. Dunn, and I hope his expression for a belief that states should handle this is an indication that he would oppose a national abortion ban, but I'm not convinced of that. Dr. Lippman, or Professor Lippman, is it fair to say that you perceive that states like my own state of California, where abortion remains legal, could be affected? Why don't you explain how that would be affected by a nationwide ban? Because I think a lot of folks in places like California don't understand how the law works.
The reality is that the Dobbs decision is almost certain to affect every person in this country or someone they know in some way. In the event that Congress passes a nationwide abortion ban, as the joint dissenters in Dobbs noted, it wouldn't be individuals having to make an already burdensome trip to New York or California to obtain an abortion. It would be having to leave the country in order to obtain one. And that's if the nationwide abortion ban didn't criminalize attempting to leave the country in order to try and obtain abortion care.
Thank you. And you share in your testimony that the court's disregard of its own precedent, both in Dobbs and in other cases this term, makes it really nearly impossible to know, for people to know in this country what rights are going to be protected. How do you feel about, what would you say to Americans, whether they can be confident that their constitutional rights can be protected in the future by this court?
I would say they cannot count on this court to protect their rights or for legal certainty. Instead, the protections are going to have to come from Congress or states that try to protect individuals who need access to abortion care and to support those individuals who choose to obtain abortion care.
Well, I thank you. I thank you for the witnesses and Madam Chair for the hearing, and I yield back.